What is going on, basketball lovers and hoop heads? Welcome back to the Check Out Basketball podcast. I'm not your co-host. I'm your host for today. This is a solo podcast. I'm your host, Bryce, here as always to take you over the weekend that was in the NBA. I'm so sorry that I missed Friday's show. I did have some dental work done last week, and my mouth was inflamed, and I could not speak. So I don't think you would have wanted to hear me if I could have. So that's over now. We're through. We're done with all of that nonsense. We are here. I'm ready to talk about basketball. We had spring forward over the weekend, so we're out of the dredges of winter. God, seasonal depression normally hits me like a truck, and I'm not saying that for like sympathy or anything, but I hate it, and it's mostly just because I get way less active. I stop being outside. It's cold. It's miserable. It sucks. And today, it was sunny out for a really long time. It was beautiful, 65-degree day all day long. I've been out of my house the entire day, having a great time. So we're sitting down now. I've got my dinner alongside me. I am watching just an incredible basketball game already between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets, the rematch that we've all been waiting for. No fights to speak of yet. So I'm having a great time. I hope you are too. I'm here to talk about a couple of different things. As always, we're going to start with a couple pieces of news up top. Then we're going to move on to some takeaways. I feel like I have so much to talk about, and I want to hit on a lot of things very shortly today. Again, this is going to be a bit of a shorter one, but just there's so much going on, as always, and plenty of things to talk about. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go over some news. All right. First things first, for news, Jason Tatum returned over this week, and he returned Friday night versus the Dallas Mavericks. Excuse me, I was forgetting what their team name was. He played against Dallas in his first game this season after, of course, the Achilles injuries he suffered during last year's playoff run. I'm going to talk about Jason Tatum in Boston here in just a little bit, so I don't want to go into it too much right now. But hey, great to have Jason Tatum back. I love having more star talent out there. I love watching talented basketball players play. I gained a lot of respect for Jason Tatum over the 2024 finals run and during 2025. Honestly, when I watch Boston a lot, and he's a very talented guy at his absolute best. He's like a top 5, borderline top 5 guy in the NBA. Super talented. Can't wait to see what that does for Boston moving forward. And other minor bits of news, Brooklyn Nets rookie guard Yegor Dwoman is set to miss the rest of the season with, I believe it was plantar fasciitis in his left foot. Feel bad for the guy. He's had a really interesting rookie year, especially considering who Yegor was as a prospect coming into the NBA. It's been up and down for him. It's not been like a stellar rookie season by any means, but it's not been terrible. He's an interesting guy to look at moving forward. I know that plantar fasciitis can be a really annoying injury to deal with, so feel bad for the guy. Hope to see him back next year. Another fun little tidbit, of course, related to the Terry Rozier situation. Do you remember Terry Rozier? You remember on the second day of the season, it broke that there was a federal investigation into Terry Rozier regarding sports gambling? Yeah. Boy, oh boy, that's can't wait for the resolution on that one. But it turns out that the Charlotte Hornets are sending a 2026 second-round pick to the Miami Heat. So the Heat will get another second-round pick this year, I guess, to resolve some issues regarding the fact that the Hornets may or may not have known that he was involved in some sports gambling fraud when they traded him back in 2024 or 2023. What an absolute mess. I'm good on the Heat, who are getting a second-round pick out of this that's going to be in the mid-40s or something. Whatever. The Miami Heat don't even like to draft players. So, okay, I guess that's something to talk about, right? That is something that happened. Some other minor injury news. Tyrese Maxey is going to miss a couple of games here coming up. I think he's missing one this evening. He injured himself over the weekend, and it looked worse maybe than it ended up being. So good news for the Philly fans. Lord knows they need it right now. The 76ers kind of struggling down the stretch run of the season with Paul George's suspension. Joel Embiid is set to miss another week or so. Now Tyrese Maxey injured, as they are in real danger of dropping into the play-in here. after such an incredible start to the season and all of the hopeful feelings around VJ Edgecombe's rookie season and Joel Embiid returning to form in January and Paul George starting to play well, all of these things that felt like they were going right for Philly now feel like they're going sideways, as they have tended to go over the past couple of years. And then the last bit of news I have for you today, the NBA has decided to step in and cancel the Atlanta Hawks Magic City Night, their collaboration with the infamous Atlanta strip club, Magic City. We'll call it what it is. They probably called it like a dance club or just a club or a bar or something like that. But Magic City is an infamous strip club, which, does have like cultural relevance in Atlanta. I know, and I really can't speak to this in any knowledgeable manner, but there's a lot of instances of, Atlanta-based rappers and artists getting their music first played at Atlantic City, and like different artists from Atlanta becoming cultural icons because of the strip club and because of the music they play. I think Migos is like one of those big artists that you can point to, and it's really interesting. Just the city seems to have this interesting kind of relationship with this club, and the NBA does as well. There was the whole Lou Williams in during COVID getting the what do you get, like wings, or he went to Atlanta while they were in the Disney bubble. He like went to Atlanta to go eat the lemon pepper wings from from Magic City, excuse me. Absolutely insane stuff. So there's like this connection between the NBA and the city of Atlanta and Magic City and whatnot. But the NBA decided to step in and cancel that promotion altogether after backlash from, like league personnel and different advertising partners with the NBA. There's, of course, the Luke Cornett, the backup center for the San Antonio Spurs, released a blog last week where he denounced the night and said it didn't respect women and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to have an opinion on this because I don't think it's my place to have an opinion on this. Strip clubs are a perfectly fine thing so long as they are safe and the women feel safe and they are respected. I think it's a perfectly fine career path for someone to choose. I think Luke Cornett in his blog kind of framed it in this way where it's like, this is disrespectful to women and this shows them in a bad light. And it's like, nah, man, I don't think you're the right person to speak on this. I don't think you should speak for them. I don't want to sit here and tell you how to feel about this whole situation. I have my opinions on it. I don't like the way that Luke Cornett went about it. I don't think it's your place to speak, bro, and it's not my place to speak. That's why I'm going to withhold my opinion. I think as male sports fans, it's been interesting to see the reaction to this. And maybe this should be like if you feel like you had a really negative reaction to this, maybe you should like look in the mirror or speak to some women sometimes and hear their opinion. That's all I can say on this. That's all I'm going to say on this because I want to move on to some takeaways. But yeah, interesting stuff as always going on in the NBA. Before I really dig into my takeaways, there were a couple of things that I just wanted to talk about. Again, I didn't get to do a podcast on Friday, so these are maybe things I would have hit on then or brought up in some way sooner. There was a lot I felt like to talk about because we're heading into the playoffs. Truth be told, most of my takeaways for the next month or so are just going to be about playoff teams because at this point in the season, that's what really matters. Most tanking teams aren't doing anything interesting, and if they do, I guess I'll talk about it. But I feel like all there really is to start preparing you for the playoffs and start thinking about these teams in a deeper manner. So there's a couple of interesting things again that I wanted to note. First things first, the Lakers. They finally beat a good basketball team. Feels like the Lakers haven't beat a good basketball team in quite some time. They handed a thumping to the Knicks yesterday. It was without LeBron James. Very interesting. I think the Lakers are 9-2 or something with Luka and Austin Reeves. No LeBron. Very interesting stat. You've already seen all the talking heads on ESPN bring it up and talk about it. I, again, don't want to delve into that here. Take of that what you will. I like the Austin Reeves and Luka pairing. I think the Lakers should continue with it moving forward. I do not think LeBron James will be a Laker next season, and this issue will resolve itself in 6 months or whatever. But yeah, the Lakers beat a good team. They beat the Knicks, who were it was 4 games and 6 nights for the Knicks. It was on the road, and it was one of those weird, like, early evening tip-off Sunday games, which if you've followed the NBA for any amount of time, or if you're somebody who likes to gamble, those early, like, afternoon, early evening, like, Saturday, Sunday tip-off games, especially for road teams, are kind of like a death sentence, and I thought the Knicks looked sluggish in that one, but the Lakers picked up a nice win without LeBron, so good on them. The Spurs keep on rolling. Man, they had a really impressive, it was 23 or 25 point comeback against the Clippers. The end of that game was absolutely hilarious, and the Clippers kind of blundered that one away, but that was the game where Wemby, as soon as the game ends, he's crying on the court, and it's awesome. They just compete their ass off. They dismantled the Rockets yesterday. Everyone on that roster is just, I love their compete level, and it starts with Wemby. Obviously, most teams play through their superstar or through the vibes of their superstar, and to have a guy who just every single night, he's crying after a regular season win, and now I don't even think we really found out why he was in tears, but man, hey, happy to see it. I have no problem with it. They kick ass. Dylan Harper has morphed into like a weird point guard off the bench for them, and I love it. Steph Castle, that dude plays with an edge. An edge is how I would describe it. That he's just kind of he'll find a way, and he's like this like chess master in a sense, and he'll just use his physicality and competitiveness to tear through you on defense and to figure out how to solve whatever matchups you throw at him on offense. I love watching that. Wemby is obviously like the ultimate chess piece, the ultimate queen that you can just move all around the board, the ultimate flexibility. Feels like he guards from sideline to sideline, baseline to baseline. He breaks offenses, he breaks defenses. It's kind of nuts. So the Spurs, I'm scared of them. They're super young, unproven teams in the playoffs. I tend to think like you have to go through it once, and in history tells us that young teams kind of have to go through one playoff failure before they really figure things out. They have to feel some real pressure before they figure things out. But man, like, they look like a team that could straight up win it all, and I don't care about the age because they break the game in a lot of ways. I think that's all I really have to say on them. The Miami Heat have won 5 games in a row, and they're looking good. They got a great win, I thought, over Charlotte on Friday night, where they really just they beat Charlotte end to end. It wasn't like a shooting variance game. It was kind of this wake-up call. I know a lot of people are riding the Hornets train, and I certainly am too. I love watching that team play. I think they are very good. They will be very interesting if and when they make the playoffs this year. I hope they do. But Miami kind of reminded you, Eric Spoelstra, Tyler Herro, Bam Adebayo, they all kind of reminded you that, like, hey, we've been in this league for a while. We normally figure it out come this time of the year. They almost always just find a way to sneak into the playoffs and remain dangerous and competitive. And I thought they've looked really good as of recent, after I was kind of just starting to doubt them after they had a pretty dreary January, early February run, and they were looking like nothing. What's really been interesting to me is that Eric Spoelstra has gone back to running the Kel'el Ware, Bam Adebayo front court, which during Kel'el Ware's rookie season was a look that the Heat used quite a bit in the second half of last year. It looked like it was very promising. The net rating and the numbers, the defense specifically for that unit looked very interesting. And then at the start of this year, Kel'el Ware just kind of seemed like he was out of it. There were all the weird comments that Eric Spoelstra made directly about Kel'el Ware to the press in January, December, February, and it kind of felt like, oh no, this guy looked really talented in his rookie year. Now in his second year, his coach is having all these concerning comments about him. It didn't look like you could play Adebayo and Ware together, and I was just kind of curious about how that relationship would continue to develop and what his development path would look like in Miami. But hey, as of recent, they've been playing the Ware Bam backcourt a lot more. They closed with it against Charlotte, and it looked really good. Ware has been particularly productive on the defensive end. A lot of defensive playmaking. The stocks are out of this world. And so that looks really good on paper. I also feel like Bam's offense is really starting to come around after just, again, along with the rest of the team, felt like a dreary midseason drought where he wasn't producing particularly well. And now, like, mid-rangers going again, the three-pointers are going back in. He's like 22 and 10 or something over the past month, and he's looked good. So shouts to the Miami Heat. Maybe they're a little bit better than I thought they were. I tend to disrespect that team because they make some head-scratching decisions, but sometimes Heat culture just wins out, and I'm just wrong about them. But yeah, those are a couple of little dot points I wanted to hit on. Now I'm going to go into my 3 takeaways. We're going to talk about 3 contending teams today. Starting with takeaway 1, something that I said I would get back to earlier. Let's talk about the Boston Celtics. Let's talk about Jason Tatum's return. Now, I am somebody who's very cautious, especially with big injuries, and especially for a guy like Tatum who's never gone through like a long-term rehab with an injury like this before. I just with these supreme athletes, and whenever they get injured for the first time, I don't think people realize how much of a mental battle it is to work your way back from that. And you could and also, like, we see oftentimes, when people are returning from these injuries, that their production, it doesn't come back immediately. Your body's just not the same. Your body went through a traumatic injury. You're probably unconditioned. You're not in game shape quite yet. And a lot of time when people come back from ACLs and Achilles or broken leg or whatever, like, a lot of people are like, oh, leading up into Jason Tatum's return, a lot of people were like, he'll be productive immediately, and like he could really do something for them. He could be something. Is Boston like the best contender in the East? Yada yada yada. I'm very on the cautious side of that argument. I just think history shows us that these guys don't come back at 100%, and that's okay. That's to be expected. You went through a traumatic injury, and your mind has been scrambled, and everything that you are, your identity as an athlete, as one of the best players in the world, has to be kind of restrained and restructured, and given the way that Boston's played this year, like the selfless play across the team, and not that Tatum's a selfish player, but just this selfless, collective, kind of hard-nosed, just hard work identity that the Celtics have had this year. I was just curious, like, Tatum watching that on the sidelines, going through his first rehab, and coming back from Achilles, honestly, very soon, compared to what we've seen from most recovery times. The average recovery time for an Achilles in the modern NBA is like 13 months, and Tatum came back after 10 months. So, like, this is really soon. I was like, let's pump the brakes on like putting expectations on him in particular, and putting expectations on the Celtics when Tatum comes back. And I'm still here to pump some brakes after what we've seen over the weekend. I think there's been a tad bit of an overreaction to Tatum's play, but man, I gotta say, he looks better than I thought he would. Now the Celtics, obviously, they picked up 2 wins over the weekend. They beat the Dallas Mavericks, not shocking, at home on Friday night, and then they had a really nice win against Cleveland on Sunday, which is, again, like another one of those weird early afternoon game start times. So put as much weight into that as you want to. It's just it's a weird game in the middle of March, and a lot of NBA teams just sometimes they don't show up for those. You see the energy just drop a lot for those games. So that's part of this argument as well. But man, like, Tatum looks smooth, I'll say. He doesn't look particularly like rigid or scared to like try his thing. When he was coming back, I was of the opinion that they should use him like in an off-ball role a lot more. Obviously, don't just like throw him back out there and be like, all right, your primary shot creator, Jason Tatum, yet again, you're going to run the offense for us. You're going to take 20 shots this game, and you're going to get a primary shot creator on the other end to defend as well. Like, I figured they weren't going to do that, and I was like, they should use him just as, like, I called it supercharged Nick Batum, where he's just like an interesting playmaking wing. You're not expecting him to do anything crazy athletic. You're not asking him to move like all over the floor. Maybe he just takes some possessions, quote unquote, off on offense, and he's like, maybe he sits in the corner for a possession or two. But I was really surprised at the amount of like primary action he was involved in, and like he's taking the pull-up threes, he's trying to get to the middies. He didn't get downhill a lot with just the ball in his hands and at the top of the key, but let's say he came off of a pin down out of the corners, or he's curling off of a screen on the wing, and they were able to get him like some momentum going downhill, and he could get downhill. I thought all of that looked great. The jumper looks like he looks fluid. He looks really fluid, maybe even more fluid than he was pre-injury, just because he doesn't have the lift on the jump shot, so it's a little bit more of like this mind-body connection. I don't know, but the jumper looks super fluid, and he looks good, like moving side to side. Just looks. Eye test is better than I thought it was going to be. I was worried that it might be like embarrassingly bad, and it's like, oh dear, he needs to sit out because he's hurting this team, and he's not really. Now granted, he shot 12 of 32 over the weekend, so the like effectiveness and results aren't quite there. But he scored 20 points against the Cavs on Sunday on 16 shots. He got to the line 7 times, 2 of 9 from 3 in that game. Like I said, the results aren't quite there yet. Obviously, the efficiency is not there yet, and that could hurt the Celtics a little bit, in my opinion, if he's still going to, not that he's insisting, but if he is going to be like, all right, I'm Jason Tatum, I'm going to take 5 pull-up threes a game, I'm going to take 4 turnaround middies a game, and all this, if that's going to be his shot selection, I think the efficiency is going to look something like this for quite a while. And that could hurt or help the Celtics. Maybe it helps the Celtics in that eventually he just sees some shots go in and he gets his confidence back and it starts to feel right again, and he's right back before we know it. I'm going to say, like, again, just being cautiously optimistic about this. It looks good. The results aren't there, and I don't anticipate the results are being there. I think there is a bit of an overreaction to the way he's looked so far. I think a lot of people want to jump out to like, oh my goodness, Boston is number 1 in the East now. They should be the ones coming out of the East. They should be the favorite contenders in the East. And I just think that's an overreaction because there's a lot that we don't know about this roster, and I think there's a lot of things that will change come playoff time. This is March we're talking about, so a lot of teams are kind of checked out at this point, and who knows like how much they're going to be like giving to the Celtics from night to night, how much every team is going to be trying. So there will be games and possessions and in quarters and periods in these games where the other team is just like, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, whatever, I've got this nagging injury, I'm just not going to defend that hard or whatever, and Tatum will pop off for a quarter, and we need to temper some of the reactions to that. I'm super interested to see this team once we get to playoff time. I think a lot of people have not overrated their rotation, but there's a lot of guys in their current rotation that are really unproven, especially in the playoffs, and none of them are guys that can really like go and create their own shots. So I think once we get to the playoffs, I'm looking for how teams defend Jason Tatum. I felt like the Cavs and the Mavericks both defended Jason Tatum as if he was still Jason Tatum. You know what I mean? And I'd be really interested to see if you get to the playoffs and he still doesn't look like 100% heading in April. I just wonder if there's a team or if there's a strategy, if there's a game, if there's a quarter, if there's a half or whatever, where a team decides to be like, all right, Jason Tatum, take the ball and score. We're going to play you straight up. We're going to duck under on every screen. We're going to be physical with you, but we're not going to help on your drives or anything. We're just going to let you try to score and see what you can do. And given that his propensity in these first couple of games is to take a lot of self-created jump shots. I'd be interested to see what that looks like under more pressure and with better defense, better attention, better yada, 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 you know. And then when we get to the playoffs as well, what happens with the rest of Boston's rotation? You know, this kind of wing triumvirate of like Baylor Shireman and Ugo Gonzalez, who I adore, but is a rookie who can't really shoot. Jordan Walsh, who's kind of fallen a bit behind in the rotation, especially with Tatum's return now. And then, of course, their bigs with Nemish Queta, Luka Garza. Nikola Vucevic broke his finger, and he might be back just before the playoffs. Like, unproven center rotation, unproven playoff wing rotation. We'll see. I'm super interested to study their rotations, again, leading into the playoffs. I can't wait till we get to the playoffs and we see what it looks like. The Celtics are so interesting. I don't think they can win it this year, and I'd like to do a bit of a deeper dive and kind of flesh out that thought a little bit more. But the more I watch them, I'm just like, this doesn't quite look like a championship team, and I think people are going to be quick to kind of crown them as like 1 or 2 in the East, and I'm just not there yet. So yeah, those are some of my Jason Tatum thoughts. I'm glad he's back. The fluidity looks good. Some of the like burst and upward athleticism isn't quite there, which is to be expected. That's perfectly okay. But I'm glad to see that he feels confident in his body. That's a big thing. He feels like he can like plant on that foot that he tore the Achilles, right? And he can leap off of one foot and move and turn around and whatever. So I'm going to be watching it, as is the rest of the NBA, because I think it's probably the biggest media storyline heading down the stretch of the regular season here. Let me know what you thought about Jason Tatum's return, and check out the YouTube channel and my Instagram, because I think I'm going to put out a reel on Jason Tatum here soon. So keep your eyes out for that one. Moving on from one Eastern Conference contender to another, we're going to get into my takeaway too here, and I just want to talk about the New York Knicks for a second. Again, I haven't talked about the Knicks all that much this season. They're a bit of an enigma this year. It feels like nobody can quite pin them down. Depending on when you watch them from night to night, you might be like, oh yeah, this is surefire, like number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. They look like absolute championship contenders too. Holy shit, we just lost by like 40 to the Mavericks at home, and we're getting our shit kicked in on a random Thursday night by the Detroit Pistons or whatever, and we don't look like a team that's ready for it in any way. So they've just been this team that's up and down all year. There's not been a ton of momentum that they built in either way, I feel like, and they vacillate wildly between how they perform week to week, night to night, whatever, quarter to quarter even. All it takes is one weird Karl Anthony Towns game for the entirety of the New York Knicks fan base to come falling apart and melting, or, falling apart at the seams and just become this melting pot of screaming New York citizens. And I wanted to talk about the Knicks, and I just wanted to talk about, as I've kind of watched them, they've had a lot of high-profile matchups over the past week or so. They played an excellent game against the Oklahoma City Thunder, one of the best matchups of the season, I felt like. They put belt to ass against the Denver Nuggets on the road. That was wildly impressive. And then, of course, they lost that game to the Lakers on Sunday night after they had been playing a lot. They also got a nice road win in Toronto. I forgot to mention that. They've just had a really good stretch of games. 2-2 are the results. 3-2 were their results, but they played some good teams. Like, they very easily could have won that game against the Thunder, and then we're talking about a week where they go 4-1, and they play some really competitive games. And as I was just watching them a bunch over the past week, I'm just like, the Knicks are so funny because I am such a big, I'm a big Brunson doubter. A mildly efficient, sometimes incredible shot-making, small, defensively liable point guard is not the primary number 1 option that I would choose if I was building an NBA team. Although he is very good, obviously. He's not a guy I trust in the playoffs, and I feel like I've kind of been vindicated with that over the past 2 seasons. Same thing with Karl Anthony Towns. Just the middling defense, the ability to disappear from games in big moments worries me a lot. So, like, their top two guys are guys I just doubt. I said so much preseason. I've said that the entire time that they had these two guys. But, man, their collection of role players might be some of my favorite in the NBA. And I'm like, if you're starting at number one, their best role player, like, if you can consider OG Anunoby a role player, I kind of think I do. Like, he's not an all-star level player for them, and he's not like a primary number one offensive option. He's like their fourth option, I would guess. But OG is spectacular. He had like that 43-point outburst against Denver. Whenever he plays, he changes the makeup defensively. He is just such a smart, physical, strong, switchy player who gets steals, gets blocks. He sets the tone, I feel like, a lot for the Knicks, especially on the defensive end. And if he's in rhythm, it kind of just carries over the rest of the team. I would easily have him on my first team all defense, and he's probably like a top 5 D-point guy for me. I adored him. I've always adored him ever since he came into the league. I believed in that dude when he was at Indiana, and he suffered that unfortunate ACL injury. OG Anunoby is one of those perfect guys who just every team would want on their roster, who just does a lot of the right things all over the court, plays his ass off. Absolutely love OG. Mitchell Robinson, like, if you slept under a rock, he's like the best offensive rebounding big in the NBA. Every time he's on the court for the Knicks, he's just grabbing every offensive board. He's gotten so much better at, like, finding three-point shooters off of those kickouts. He's a hell of a rim protector and defender. He's a guy who is happy to rim run and dunk the ball every time he gets it. He plays with an edge, and he's so, like we saw last year when they were playing against Indiana in the playoffs. Mitchell Robinson is just so crucial for the Knicks' success. I love a big who does little things that help you win. Those guys go so underappreciated, although he's in New York, he's in a large market, makes a bunch of money, so there is certainly some attention on him, of course. Landry Shamet is a guy I feel like deserves a shout out. He couldn't quite find his way into the rotation at the start of the year, and really with Deuce McBride out now, and ever since Jordan Clarkson kind of disappeared from the rotation, Landry Shamet has stepped in and just become a nice, like, genuine 3-and-D wing. I feel like the term 3-and-D wing is a bit overused in the NBA. There's a lot of guys who are one or the other. They're like fine 3-point shooters and good defenders, or they're good 3-point shooters and they're mad defenders or whatever. But Landry Shamet, if you haven't paid attention, is like a genuinely good defender. He plays with like some toughness and some rigidity. He'll take contact to the chest and he'll kind of move you around. He'll at the very least try, and he's somewhat sizable, like 6'5", 6'6" or something. And he's a great 3-point shooter, always just hitting these very timely threes. Speaking of Mitchell Robinson kickouts, Jesus Christ, if Mitchell Robinson grabs the ball and Landry Shamet is in the vicinity, that ball's going straight to that man's hands, and it's definitely going in the hoop immediately after that. So I love Landry Shamet. Like, I remember earlier in his career when he was a 3-point sharpshooter only, and he kind of just couldn't find his way or stick with any teams or find his way into like a solid rotation. And I feel like here now he's kind of evolved and developed himself, and I love like a late career development story. He's just a guy I've kept my eyes on a lot more than I thought I would. Shouts to Landry Shamet. Jose Alvarado is another guy who's been fun. He kind of waxes and wanes for the Knicks. If he's not like shooting well on a particular night, he can kind of disappear from games. All right, sorry I suffered a mild disruption there, although you shouldn't notice anything. But as I was kind of talking about with Jose Alvarado, he's a guy who can disappear from games if he's not shooting threes well on a particular night. I feel like his effectiveness obviously almost disappears because he's just so small, and he kind of can't contribute anything on one end. It doesn't open up the opportunity for him to, be able to get into the paint or penetrate and then kick out off of that. But still, like, the antics on defense, the like fire and competitive that he plays with is super fun to watch, and I love him for that. Josh Hart obviously is another guy who deserves a shout out here. I applaud him a lot for they haven't quite solved it, but for him being able to figure out a lot of the cross matching where teams decide to put a center on him and kind of neutralize the Knicks spacing because Josh Hart doesn't serve as a floor spacer. I feel like he's done a lot to mitigate that problem this year, and I applaud him for that. He also contributes as a energetic defender, one of the best rebounding 6'4" guys I've ever seen in my entire life. Again, competitiveness, fire, another guy that any contending team would love to have on their roster. Epitome of a great role player. I also think Karl-Anthony Towns deserves a bit of a shout out here in the sense that, Karl-Anthony Towns was drawing a lot of ire from people earlier in the season, especially December into January when the Knicks were going through a real slump. They had that 2-9 stretch, and Karl-Anthony Towns drew a lot of criticism because he would disappear from games. He was playing super inefficiently. He was scoring the least amount in his career. There was no physicality, edge, or competitiveness to him whatsoever. And now the numbers probably don't look great. I don't exactly know what they are. He's not scoring a ton, but I feel like the Knicks have done, and Karl-Anthony Towns has done, a great job of putting himself in position to just rebound the absolute shit out of the ball and play with a lot of toughness down low and get offensive boards. Now it feels like we're at a point where the Knicks have two centers that they can put on the court at any one time who are going to rebound the ball exceptionally well, as we've seen, kind of the trend. It's been the trend in the NBA over the past year or two to kind of tilt the possession battle in your favor, and that's how you can win a lot of games in the regular season and even in the playoffs, is just by having more possessions and taking more shots than your opponent. And a big way that teams can do that is by going all in on offensive rebounding. So for the Knicks to have two guys on the floor who can get offensive rebounds like monsters is pivotal for them. And while he's not this center who's going out and, Karl-Anthony Towns is scoring 25 points a game and driving from the perimeter and taking post moves and hitting 4 threes a game. No, he's not been that, but he has been this rebounding machine who just gets into the teeth of the defense and he'll muscle his way up through guys. And I feel like the defense has been a lot better as of late. He's played with a little bit more edge, and I like that from him. So he deserves a shout out there. Again, this team will kind of go as Jalen Brunson goes, I feel like, just because he's the primary shot creator. There's still a lot of possessions where Jalen Brunson dribbles the absolute air of the ball and takes a mid-ranger after 15 seconds, and that's just going to be what it is. And the Knicks' success in the playoff will be partly, based on their ability to continue to get offensive rebounds, to play physical, tough defense, to hit outside shots, and for their role players to play at their elevated level. And then the other half of the equation there is whether Jalen Brunson will be able to score 30 points a game. Who knows? We'll see. That'll probably determine their future. But I just wanted to talk about the Knicks role players because I think they're really, really damn good, and they're really underrated as a core group of guys in the NBA. They just I was just as a thought experiment, I was could you imagine if the Knicks had Shea instead of Brunson? And obviously Shea is a guy who has an argument for the best player in the league. So it's if you put the best player in the league on any team, they'd obviously be better. But if it was a guy with a little bit more size and was a little bit more efficient and could play defense a little bit more, man, I would buy all the way into the Knicks as a contender. But we shall see. We shall see what happens. That's all I have for the East right now. For takeaway number 3, which I don't want to spend a ton of time on, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves real quick. Again, another team that I feel like I haven't spoken on much this year. They're super interesting. I feel like they're a darling pick amongst a bunch of media guys as this is a dark horse contender. Everybody loves Anthony Edwards. Rudy Gobert is having a phenomenal, DPOY level season. Genuinely, he's easily a top 3 DPOY candidate to me. He's been phenomenal. Jaden McDaniels is having the best season of his career. I just did a video about him on my YouTube channel. You should go check it out if you haven't. They made the Ayo Dosunmu move at the trade deadline, and that's looked pretty nice for them as well. They've had Julius Randle, I think, is having a nice season. He's having a Julius Randle-like season, and they're everybody's dark horse contender. And I feel like it's my trend to be a bit of a negative Nancy, or maybe I'm just realistic, okay? Maybe I'm not one of these guys that's like, yeah, there's 10 contenders in the NBA. I could talk myself into anybody. I'm kind of over the Timberwolves, like, lackadaisical nature in the regular season. If you want me to take you seriously as a contender, how about you take the season seriously? How about you take positioning and seeding seriously? How about you compete on a night-to-night level, and then I can take you seriously? I'm just kind of over this whole thing where it's been the past 2 seasons with them. They have stretches where they go 6-1 and they beat a couple of good teams. You know, they had that weekend where they beat Denver. They were on like this 6-1 stretch over their last 7 games. They looked really good. They shot up to the 3 seed, and then all of a sudden they walk in on a Sunday, and they lose by 27 points to the Orlando Magic. They give up 119 points in that game and only scored 92, and it's just moments like that where I'm like, how does that happen? How does that happen? The Orlando Magic, I don't know if you've noticed this season, they struggle to score the ball. They struggle pretty much on every facet in every aspect of the game. They've been a mid-team all year. Why are you losing by 27 points? That feels kind of ridiculous to me. And they'll probably have a stretch here where they lose a couple of more games or whatever. And I'm kind of over it. I'm kind of sick of people pretending like it's not a big deal. I'm not fans of teams that their effort waxes and wanes night to night, and they don't take the regular season seriously, and they're like, oh, we know how to turn it on when the playoffs come around. And sure, they've made the Western Conference Finals for the past 2 years. Maybe they do know how to turn it on when the playoff comes around. I also think they've gotten kind of lucky over the past 2 years, and the matchups have really broken right for them, and they've been able to beat some teams that, like, they were favored against, even though they were the lower seed or whatever. Before we start calling teams dark horse contenders, like, I just show me the effort. I'm sick of this whole thing where they seem kind of immature. That's not a shot at Anthony Edwards or anything, although he certainly is still pretty immature as a player, but he's a guy who's super competitive, and I think he wants to win. There is a drive to win, but I'm just like, you guys got to buckle up the effort from night to night. They're also a team for me that is a fascinating offseason outlook team, just because I don't think people realize quite yet, like, the situation that they're in as far as assets. They haven't done a great job of, like, drafting and developing other young talent outside of Anthony Edwards, who is still very young, but Rudy Gobert is going to get another year older. Julius Randle is over 30 years old. They're like I don't think they're a second apron team, but they're a first apron team. Like, they're out of money to spend on new guys to bring in. They're out of first round draft picks to spend to go draft new young talent. They're not stuck. I don't think anybody's ever truly stuck in the NBA. You can normally worm your way out of situations as long as you're smart and heady. But I think secretly Minnesota has one of the, like, I feel like we could get to a point 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line where it's like, oh man, what are the Timberwolves doing with Anthony Edwards primes? Like, this is one of the most electric young guards in the NBA. And maybe at that point he's like a top 5 guy in the league or whatever. And they just aren't able to build the right roster or assimilate the right talent around them. Again, there's only going to be so long that Rudy Gobert is this good, I fear. And he's been really good, and he's kind of pulling this defense together in a worrisome way. Like, there's a lot put on his shoulders to carry that team's defense. And they're just kind of sneakily out of options to upgrade. And if they fall short this year, let's say they lose in the second round, they lose in the first round this year, like they don't make the Western Conference Finals again, what do we do with them at that point? It'll be really interesting to talk about them. So yeah, I felt like I needed to get that off my chest just a little bit, doing a deep dive on Jaden McDaniels and kind of that team as a whole, but then, watching them still be they're lauded and they're very well respected, I feel like, on a general consensus. But I think their positioning as a franchise looking forward is, I don't know, it's a little more questionable than I think people realize. And I just wish they could get their shit together a little bit and just string together several months of competitive play rather than week to week. You know what I mean? And just looking kind of lackadaisical. Because if they don't figure it out soon, I'm not going to say I fear for the consequences, but who knows? Who truly knows? But that's enough on the Timberwolves. That's enough for takeaways this week. I'm going to give you a couple of matchups to look forward. We've got some fun ones this week, believe it or not, still in the season. We're still producing good games from night to night. Of course, it's a beautiful Monday night. I'm watching this excellent Nuggets versus Thunder game. If you're watching the video on YouTube, you might see me continue to look over at my other screen here to keep my eyes on that one. That's super fun. The Knicks and Clippers play tonight. Another road game for the Knicks. I just told you how much I've enjoyed watching them, so I will definitely have my eyes on that one. Tuesday night, we get Spurs Celtics. Jason Tatum back. That one's on Peacock. Celtics away at the Spurs. That would be a huge game if the Celtics won that one, excuse me. But yeah, Wemby is always a good matchup. Wemby in competitive atmospheres is always a good thing and produces well for us. So keep your eyes on that one. We've got Timberwolves Lakers on Tuesday night as well. Timberwolves have played well outside of that shitty loss to the Magic. The Lakers have played well without LeBron James. So playoff rematch from last year. On Wednesday, we get the Houston Rockets playing the Denver Nuggets. That could be a very important game for seeding, which at this point, as we're heading down the stretch in the Western Conference, I am very much keeping my eyes on. And then Thursday night, we have the Celtics against the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's going to be the Celtics on that's a pretty long Western Conference road trip they've been on. So yeah, the Celtics will have been on a long Western Conference road trip at that point, and the Thunder will have a couple of days of rest at home. So I don't know. I'm projecting a bit of I think the Thunder should comfortably handle that one. But again, anytime we can see Jason Tatum right now is going to be interesting and a lot of high leverage competition for him immediately. We have Nuggets versus Spurs on that night as well, so should be a good matchup. Wemby against Jokic, and I think that's it until we get to Friday, and I'll talk more about some matchups then. And I think that should just about do me for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you made it to this point, feel free to go ahead and follow along on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Of course, also, please do follow me on YouTube at Check Up a Basketball Show. There's constant uploads over there. I'm kind of changing up the content a little bit, but I don't want to talk about that. But if you want to watch some long-form stuff with some film analysis and some shorts content over there, it's good. I promise. It's okay. At the very least, I think it's fine. And I would love if you went and checked it out. Feel free to follow me at any of my socials as well. Those links will be in the description. Thank you so much again for watching this, and I do truly hope to catch you in the next one. Goodbye.